There is a kind of silence that weighs more than any scream, the silence of decisions. Deep down, we all know that there is an invisible choice guiding us every day. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. No one escapes them. One builds, the other corrodes. One demands effort now, the other exacts its price later. And it is at this point, in this instant, when there's still time to choose, that the true awakening of the human being begins. Carl Jung said that nothing is heavier than carrying what we could have been, but never had the courage. This is a phrase that seems simple, but contains an abyss. Because at some point in life, each person realizes that their own soul is divided between what it is and would be, between comfort and growth, between security and truth. Discipline is the voluntary sacrifice of comfort in the name of something greater, a silent promise you make to yourself. Regret, on the other hand, is the cold shadow of all broken promises, a kind of ghost that haunts us when time begins to demand what courage refused to deliver. Think about it. How many times have you felt the urge to change and yet remained still? How many times have you known what you needed to do, but found a justification for not doing it now? The mind is ingenious in its traps. It creates stories, invents reasons, convinces you that you're not ready, that you need to wait for the right moment. But the right moment never comes, because it doesn't exist outside a decision. Waiting is a sophisticated form of giving up, a surrender disguised as prudence. And the cruelest thing is that life doesn't warn you when the opportunity just moves on. Jung called this unconscious resistance, a silent force that keeps us trapped in what is familiar, even when the familiar is slowly destroying us. It's as if a part of the mind is afraid to leave its prison because it has learned to memorize it. And the result is a life in suspension, where one lives only half a life, promising oneself that one day one will change. But time is a relentless judge. It observes in silence and charges high interest for every wasted second. It doesn't care about excuses, only results. Discipline, in this context, is an act of spiritual rebellion. It's challenging the inner voice that says later. It's standing up against comfortable inertia and choosing to act even when everything within you begs for rest. Discipline is a form of love, but a love that hurts, because loving your own destiny requires abandoning false versions of yourself. And there is no sharper pain than realizing that you are solely responsible for what you have not yet. Regret, on the other hand, is treacherous. It doesn't arrive suddenly, it creeps in gradually. It appears in the form of thoughts that whisper, "What if I had tried? What if I had started sooner?" At first, it's a mild, almost bearable discomfort, but as the years go by, it transforms into an invisible anchor. Every memory of what could have been becomes a reminder that courage was replaced by hesitation, and that's how a human being ages inside. Not with time, but with the chances they let slip by. How many people do you know who live trapped in old stories, who still talk about plans they never put into practice, ideas that remained on paper, promises they never kept? Most people are not defeated by great tragedies, but by small postponements. Failure rarely comes as an explosion. It accumulates in subtle layers of self-betrayal. It's a tomorrow that becomes a week that becomes a year that becomes a lifetime. And perhaps that is the most dangerous illusion, believing that there is time. Time seems infinite when we are distracted, but it is the most limited resource we have. Jung believed that life is a sequence of opportunities for integration moments in which consciousness invites us to grow. When we ignore these invitations, the unconscious react creates symptoms, anxiety, insomnia, disaction. It's not bad luck, it's a message. The psyche is trying to get your attention, but we've learned to ignore these signs. We call them bad phases, lack of motivation, and we move on. But every time you ignore the call to change, you lose a little more of your vital force. The soul becomes heavy, energy dissipates, the gaze loses its sparkle, and the world somehow seems to become grayer. Everything that isn't lived with purpose begins to rot. Discipline is the antidote to this decay. It is the conscious act of confronting the entropy of one's own existence. It is the moment when you decide that life will not be left to chance. And curiously, the more you practice discipline, the more you realize that it's not a punishment, but a portal. Because by committing to something every day, even something small, you begin to rebuild the bridge between who you are and who you could be. With each act of discipline, a new version of to breathe. But why is it so difficult? Because change requires dying, not physically, but symbolically. Every disciplined choice is a small death, the death of laziness, procrastination, comfort, illusion, and the ego hates to die. It resists, fights, creates distractions. With every attempt to rise, it pulls you back to whispering, "It's not worth that much effort. You won't succeed. I'll do it later." Deep down, you know it's a lie. Discipline is the confrontation between the self that wants to grow and the self that wants to remain asleep. It's a silent war fought within the mind. Sometimes, the battle is so intense that it seems impossible to win. Just one choice, one act of courage is enough to start the balance shifting. The simple act of beginning is already a psychological. It's consciousness taking the helm of the unconscious. Think about it. What if every time you procrastinate, you're not just postponing a task, but postponing a version of yourself? What if time isn't just a ticking clock, but an invisible countdown to the day regret knocks on? How many more opportunities are you willing to bury in the name? The paradox is that the pain of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. The first hurts now, the second hurts forever. And yet most choose the second, not because they want to suffer, but because they fear the immediate. It's easier to postpone than to act, more comfortable to dream than to achieve. But the price of comfort is mediocrity. Jung believed that human suffering stems from the conflict between what we are and what we could be. Discipline is the bridge between these two extremes. It is the daily practice of aligning thought with action, desire with duty, intention with gesture. And each time you choose to act despite resistance, something within you is strengthened. Life doesn't change with grand revolutions, but with small daily loyalty. Keeping your promises to yourself is an act of. It doesn't matter if the step is small. What matters is that it's in the right direction. The entire universe rearranges itself in favor of those. Stagnation repels, movement attracts. So the question is simple, yet profound. Which pain will you choose? The momentary pain of discipline or the eternal pain of regret? The first demands strength, but brings freedom. The second saves effort, but demands a toll on the soul. In the end, both hurt. The difference is that one heals, the other destroys. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of existence. Freedom is born only from what first seems like a prison. Discipline is the art of freeing oneself. It is the act of transforming inner chaos into direction, confusion into purpose, fear into movement. It is the invisible thread that connects the present to the future, the promise to the fulfillment. And when you finally understand this, you realize that the real enemy was never effort, but procrastination. Time is passing, whether you want it to or not. It always collects what is due. The difference is that those who choose the pain of discipline pay the price sooner and reap the reward later. Those who choose regret do the opposite. They enjoy it sooner and pay for it for the rest of their lives. Ultimately, what defines destiny isn't the big decisions, but the small choices repeated every day. And the most important of these is this: will you keep promising for tomorrow, or will you start today? Because ultimately, time does not forgive those who discard it. It merely observes silently, waiting for the moment to present the bill. And when that day arrives, there is no going back. What if that day is today? There's a moment when everything seems calm, but inside, you know something is out of place. It's the moment when the body wakes up, but the soul continues to sleep. Get up, go through the routines, do what needs to be done, but you feel an absence, kind of emptiness that no distraction can fill. It is in this silent space between what you live and like to live, shadow of Carl Jung. He said that whoever looks outside dreams, whoever looks inside awakes. Most people prefer to continue dreaming because looking inside requires courage. It is there that the truths we avoid live, the impulses we deny, the fears we disguise with smiles. Discipline, when viewed from the outside, seems rigid, almost cold. But in essence, it is the opposite. It is the warmth of consciousness burning away illusions. It is an act of love for one's own soul. What many call lack of discipline is, in fact, fear of facing oneself. Because being disciplined is a process of self-confrontation, and looking at one's own shadow hurts. Jung believed that every time we choose the easiest path, not only avoiding physical effort, but running away from a part of ourselves that demands maturity. Imagine a common scenario. You promise yourself you'll wake up early to work out. Set your alarm, mentally prepare yourself, but when the alarm rings, something inside you whispers, just 5 more minutes. That something isn't just laziness, it's unconscious resistance. It's the mind trying to preserve familiar comfort, even if the price is your own growth. The problem is that every time you give in, something inside you weakens. Not just a lost morning, a silent vow of self-doubt. And over time, these small vows form an invisible prison. There are people who spend their entire lives postponing awakening. They believe they need to wait for the right moment, and their mind is calm, when they have money to spare, and they have time. But the right moment never comes, because life doesn't wait for perfect alignment. It happens in chaos. Discipline doesn't flourish when everything is in its place. It's born from disorder, pressure. It's a choice made amidst the noise. Imagine someone sitting before an unfinished project, book, a song, a business, any dream. They look at the blank screen and feel the weight of failure even before beginning. So they decide to do something else. Check their phone, open a social network, hide their death. Small escapes, disguised as productivity. Deep down, the fear isn't of making a mistake, it's of revealing themselves. Because every true creation carries the signature of the soul, and exposing that, becoming vulnerable. Discipline, in this case, isn't about writing the book, it's about facing the mirror. The curious thing is that the more we stray from discipline, the more life demands it of us with subtle symptoms. A fatigue without cause, constant irritation, a feeling of stagnation. Jung said that everything that does not become conscious returns as destiny. What you don't confront internally ends up repeating itself externally. That's why some people experience the same problems, attract the same conflicts, feel the same pain. They don't realize that what they call bad luck is, in fact, shadow, is demanding. There is something profoundly human in this struggle between what we want to be, what we truly. We all carry a duality, a part that dreams and another that sabotages. And it is between these two forces that discipline becomes a bridge. It is the gesture that says, I choose to grow, even if it hurts. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to say no to the temptation of comfort. It hurts to act when the mind screams to stop. It hurts to maintain focus when everything around invites distraction. There is a kind of pain that purifies, and that is the pain of discipline. A man once recounted how he began running every day at 5 in the morning. At first, he hated every second. His body protested. Sleep dragged him back. His mind told him it was a waste of time, but he continued. And one day, while running in the biting cold, he realized that the suffering had changed form. It was no longer resistance, it was presence. What had once been punishment became a silent dialogue with his mind. I'm not here to run, he thought. I'm here to remember who I am. Discipline had ceased to be an obligation and had become identity. Perhaps this is the key that Jung tried to teach us. True freedom is not doing what you want, having control over what you feel. As long as you don't control your impulse, someone or something is controlling you. Your cell phone, fear, anxiety, the desire for approval. Discipline is the art of regaining control of your own. When you commit to it, you begin to realize that the external world reorganizes itself. Opportunities appear, ideas flow, chance ceases to seem like chance. What changes is not the world, it's the way you see it. Kind of mystery in this process. The more you discipline the body, the freer the mind becomes. It's as if external order opens up space for inner silence. You begin to perceive nuances that previously went unnoticed. The sound of the wind, the brightness of the morning, the very rhythm of your breath. Discipline, then, ceases to be effort and becomes meditation in motion. It is the body in service of the soul. But there is a subtle danger. When we begin to reap the rewards of discipline, the ego tries to claim the credit. It whispers, now you're better than you deserve rest. Done enough. It is at this point that many regress. Pride is sabotaged, disguised as and that is why true discipline needs to be accompanied by humility. It is not about being perfect, but about remaining mindful. Sometimes life creates situations that force us into discipline, even without us realizing it. Illness, a loss, a crisis. These are moments when chaos forces us to reorganize our priorities. And when everything seems to crumble, that's when the essence is revealed. Jung said that the shadow is the gateway to power, and that the gold of the soul is always hidden in what we avoid. Perhaps discipline is precisely this excavation, digging in the dark until you find the light that has always been there. In everyday life, it may seem simple, waking up at the same time, doing what you promised, saying no to what distracts you, following through even when you don't feel like it. But behind these simple gestures, something grand is happening. Every time you fulfill what you said you would do, you are rebuilding trust between the conscious and the unconscious. You are saying to yourself, I can trust myself, and that trust changes everything. Think about how many times you felt lost, directionless, waiting for a sign from the universe. What if that sign is precisely the discomfort you feel now? What if that discomfort is your soul's nudge telling you it's time? Resistance is proof that the journey, the more you feel like giving up, the closer you are to something valuable. The mind only creates barriers to what. Perhaps the great turning point lies not in doing more, but in looking at things differently. Discipline is not a prison that prevents you from living, but the key that unlocks the cell of inner. The act of remembering every day that you have. Because in the end, true strength doesn't come from motivation, but from confronting your own shadow. And it is this confrontation that separates those who awaken from those who remain asleep. Pain of discipline, temporary. The pain of regret, eternal. And while many still seek shortcuts, what truly transforms is the simple act of choosing, even without guarantee, even without certainties, even with fear. Because something happens inside you when you decide to act. The world starts to move along with you. Coincidence ceases to be chance, ceases to be chance. Destiny begins to bend to your will. And it is at that moment that you realize that discipline, far from being a prison, is the first step towards the freedom you have always sought. But what if the real enemy wasn't a lack of strength, but rather the illusion of still time? There comes a moment when a dream transforms into a burden. The desire, once a source of inspiration, begins to become a... It is then that we realize that what prevents us from creating is not a lack of talent, fear of being seen. The mind creates sophisticated traps. It's not good enough yet. I need to study more. Not the right time. But what these phrases hide is a simple and painful truth. The fear of not living up to one's idealized image. The unconscious knows that by acting, we become vulnerable, and therefore constructs the illusion of endless preparation. Jung called this neurotic perfectionism, the most elegant disguise of cowardice. The perfectionist believes they are being careful when, in reality, they are running away. They are in exile within their own potential. They revise, correct, postpone, and each time they do so, they feed the invisible monster of stagnation. The mind convinces itself that it is evolving, but the body knows it's standing still. The heart feels the distance between what is dreamed and what is done. And this distance is the cradle of modern anguish, the feeling that we are always owing something to ourselves. Life is full of such examples. The writer who never publishes, the musician who never records, the entrepreneur who never starts, the student who never finishes. They all have one thing in common. They await permission from a future that doesn't exist. And time, relentless, observes in silence. But what if time isn't waiting for you? What if the future you imagine is just an echo of the fear of starting now? Perfection is a trick of the unconscious to preserve control. The fear of making mistakes is the fear of losing the illusion of mastery over one's own. When you act, the fantasy shatters and the truth comes to light. That's why many prefer to dream rather than act. Dreaming is safe. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't expose you. Safety is a slow form of death. Nothing rots faster than unlived talent. A man recounted that he spent 20 years writing the same book, but never finished it. He said he wasn't ready yet, that he needed to live more before publishing. One day, rereading the old pages, he realized he no longer recognized the voice that had written them. Time had passed, and with it the author he could have been. The book was never completed. What remained was the regret of not having allowed imperfection to exist. He understood too late that what heals fear is not thought, but movement. What if mistakes aren't the end, but the beginning of learning? What if vulnerability is the true gateway to creation? Jung believed that all psychological repression manifests physically. When we deny the will to act, the body speaks. It's that weight in the chest, the lump in the throat, the insomnia without a parent. The unconscious screams through the body when the soul is being suffocated by. It's not weakness, it's a symptom. Procrastination is the language of fear. Tiredness, a warning of disconnection. Ignoring these signs is like driving with the handbrake on. You move, but the wear and tear is constant. Discipline, in a sense, is a form of healing. Every time you act despite fear, you are reprogramming the subconscious. It's like teaching the mind a new language, that of confidence. Action is the purest form of prayer. It's saying to the universe, I am ready, even if imperfect. And the universe responds with movement, coincidences, opportunities. Reality seems to conspire in favor of those who act, but the truth is simpler. Those who move find what was standing still, waiting for them. But what if fear is not an enemy, but a messenger? Fear is the gatekeeper between who you are and who you can be. It appears not to block, but to test your desire. It silently asks, do you really want? When you confront it, it dissipates. When you run away, it grows. Discipline is the act of crossing that door every day. There are no shortcuts. Each step taken is an invisible victory over the mind that wants to remain in the same place. An artist once recounted that he only truly began painting when he stopped trying to impress others. He realized that perfectionism wasn't about seeking quality, but about seeking approval. I stopped painting for others and started painting to understand what was inside me, he said. Since then, his art has come alive. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. Discipline is the bridge that connects the ego to the soul, the mechanical act to the conscious act. But what happens when you decide to keep going even without motivation? Motivation is unreliable. It appears when it wants and leaves without. Discipline is what remains when it's the anchor that prevents the tide of doubt from carrying everything away. And the curious thing is that when you act without willpower, the act itself recreates the will. The movement rekindles the fire that thought extinguished. There's a hidden wisdom in this. The mind follows the body, not the other way around. Ultimately, it all comes down to a silent choice between the comfort of the known and the uncertainty of growth. And ironically, the known is often what hurts the most. The habit of self-sabotage becomes so familiar that it feels like safety. That's why change requires a kind of courage that can't be shouted. The courage to be disappointed by one's own laziness. But what if what you call failure is just a consistency test? Life seems to resist our plans until we prove that we truly want them. The universe tests persistence, not desire. And it is precisely on the days when everything seems futile that transformation is silent, subterranean, invisible. The rational mind doesn't perceive it, but the unconscious is reorganizing it. The old habit loses strength, the new one takes shape. There's something almost sacred in this process of repeating what matters. Consistency, even imperfect consistency, a form of faith. It's believing in what you haven't yet seen. Each morning you choose to try again is a prayer made in motion, and little by little, the energy changes. What was once effort becomes instinct. What once required discipline becomes pleasure. The soul begins to trust you, and perhaps that's the real secret. The path doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. Discipline isn't the end of freedom. The beginning of it. It's the point where fear loses its hold, desire gains direction. What if deep down, everything you call a struggle is just the natural process of becoming who you were meant to be? It is said that human beings do not fear suffering itself, but the meaning it carries. When something hurts and seems purposeless, the pain transforms into despair. But when pain has direction, comes strength. This is why some people manage to overcome tragedies and emerge more aware, while others are lost in the face of small frustrations. Jung believed that the difference lies in the meaning we attribute to it. Discipline, seen from this perspective, is the act of transforming chaos into meaning. It is not a moral prison, but a psychological instrument capable of giving form to the raw energy of life. There's a curious story about Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps. He observed that prisoners who found purpose, even amidst the horror, had a better chance of surviving. One man, for example, endured forced labor and hunger by imagining himself back home, rebuilding his life with his wife. Another dreamed of finishing a book he had started before the war. These men had something to do after the pain, and that kept them alive. Those who lost their meaning quickly succumbed to despair. Frankl said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Jung would go further. He would affirm that purpose not only sustains life but organizes the unconscious. Without it, the mind fragments. In a world where everything is immediate, purpose has become a luxury. People confuse goals with meaning. They want money, status, recognition, and believe that this will bring fulfillment. But when they achieve what they sought, they discover an even greater emptiness. It's the same emptiness felt by someone who reaches the top of a mountain and realizes that the horizon remains distant. This happens because the goal was external, not internal. The discipline that springs from the ego is fragile. The discipline that springs from the soul is unwavering. Once, a man approached Jung saying he was unhappy with his life. He had a good career, a stable marriage, loyal friends, felt a nameless anger. Jung listened and asked, "When was the last time you did something simply because you believed good, and not because it was convenient?" The man couldn't answer. Jung explained that his suffering didn't stem from something lacking, but from something that had ceased to make sense. The modern mind is surrounded by comfort, but lacking in purpose. This lack of meaning creates a curious phenomenon, emotional procrastination. It's not just postponing tasks, it's postponing life itself. People feel that something is wrong, but they can't name what it is. So they distract themselves, series, social media, consumption, trying to fill a void that cannot be resolved with stimuli. They don't realize that the void is, in fact, a calling. Jung said that when the soul wants to grow, it creates discomfort. Boredom and apathy are signs that the unconscious is asking for transformation. Imagine a young man who works at something he hates, but stays there because it pays the bills. Every day he wakes up with a slight feeling of suffocation, a weariness that doesn't come from the body, but from the soul. At night, he tries to alleviate the weight with distractions. Nothing works for him. One day, in the midst of this cycle, he decides to write a text about what he feels. It's not a perfect text, nor planned. It's a catharsis. When he finishes, he feels something different, a peace he hasn't known in a long time. He didn't gain anything material from it, but for the first time in years, he felt alive. That's the power of meaningful action. Realigns the being. The discipline, in this case, wasn't imposed. It was born from the desire for reconnection. It's curious how the mind tries to resist what the soul needs. Unconscious knows the way, but the ego tries to control it. Jung compared the psyche to an underground river. Don't create banks, it overflows. Discipline is that bank. It shapes inner energy so that it doesn't become destructive. Pleasure without direction becomes addiction. Will without focus becomes anxiety. Talent without purpose becomes waste. The world is full of talented people trapped in their own distractions. They confuse movement with progress, run a lot without a destination. Modern science confirms something Jung intuited almost a century ago. The brain seeks coherence between intention and researchers at Stanford University discovered that when someone performs small tasks aligned with a personal purpose, the brain releases dopamine in a more balanced way, creating a sustainable cycle of well-being. This explains why simple habits, like writing every day, meditating, exercising, generate emotional stability. The mind needs direction as much as the body needs oxygen. But there's an aspect that few understand. Discipline is not rigidity. The disciplined person is not the one who never fails, but the one who always returns. Consistency is not perfection, it's a return. Every growth process involves setbacks. There are days when focus disappears, when energy vanishes, purpose seems distant. It is on these days that discipline shows its true nature, not as an oppressive force, but as a silent reminder. Get up. There's still a way forward. Once, a monk was asked about the secret to enlightenment. He replied, "Sit down, breathe, and keep going." When the person pressed him, "What if nothing seems to work?" The monk smiled and said, "Keep going anyway." There is a hidden wisdom in this simple advice. The mind seeks immediate results, but the unconscious works at slower pace. When you persist in what is right, even without seeing progress, you're sending a profound message to the psyche: I will not run away anymore. And the unconscious, little by little, begins to respond with order, clarity. And this is how true transformation is born, not in bursts of motivation, but in silent repetition. Self-mastery is built on small daily loyalties: waking up when you promised, saying no to what distracts you, staying focused even without witnesses. Discipline is the dialogue between the being you are and the being you are trying to be born. But there's something even more surprising. The human mind reorganizes itself when it finds meaning. Neuroscience studies have shown that personal meaning activates brain regions associated with brilliance and pleasure. In other words, when what we do has purpose, the brain literally feels pain. This explains why people passionate about their work endure pressures that would destroy others. They don't see effort as sacrifice, but as expression. Suffering changes its name when it gains purpose, ceases to be a burden, and becomes a path. An unlikely example of this comes from mountaineer Reinhold Messner, the first man to climb Everest without supplemental oxygen. He recounted that, during the ascent, he even doubted his own sanity. His body was at its limit, his mind almost collapsing. But something inside him said, "Keep going." When he reached the summit, he didn't feel euphoria, but a profound, almost sacred silence. He said he understood, at that moment, that the goal wasn't the summit, but the inner transformation brought about by the journey. That is, the essence of discipline leads us through arduous paths only to show us that the destination has always been. Jung believed that every individuation process required a symbolic death. The old must die so that the new can be born. But few are willing to undergo this kind of death. We want growth without renunciation, wisdom without pain, evolution without surrender. But the unconscious doesn't negotiate, demands a price. Every real change implies leaving behind a part of oneself. Discipline is this symbolic act of consciously dying every day to be reborn a little more whole. And perhaps that's why discipline, chores, ceases to be effort and becomes devotion. It's no longer "I need to do this," it's "I want to be." It transforms into a way of being. Those who understand this no longer seek motivation, seek meaning. Because when purpose is strong, action becomes natural. But there's a question that echoes silently in the depths of consciousness. What if procrastination isn't a lack of willpower, but a lack of meaning? No one is undisciplined with what they truly love. When the heart understands the why, the body finds the how. And perhaps, in the end, true discipline is just that, the daily commitment to not forgetting who you really are. There comes a moment when something within us awakens, silent, almost invisible, yet impossible to ignore breaking point. It's when the body continues repeating the same gesture, soul begins to scream in another direction. Life, which previously seemed predictable, begins to send signals. Unexplained tiredness, irritation with small things, the feeling that time is passing too quickly. Jung called this moment the call of the self, the inner voice that tries to correct the course of destiny. When it speaks, it doesn't shout, it whispers. And the biggest mistake is pretending not to hear it. Many feel this calling, but confuse it with anxiety. They try to stifle the restlessness with distractions, filling every minute of the day to avoid facing the emptiness that grows inside. But the more they ignore it, the tighter life becomes. Situations repeat themselves, people drift away, opportunities slip through their fingers. It is the unconscious manifesting itself in the form of a crisis, demanding change. Jung said that the unconscious does not remain silent. It adapts, and when ignored for too long, it takes control. It is when fate seems to conspire against us, when everything we try seems to go wrong. But what we call bad luck may simply be the soul demanding. There's a man who once recounted losing his job, his marriage, and his health almost simultaneously. At the height of his grief, he believed life had abandoned him. But months later, he realized those losses weren't punishment, liberation. Each collapse had torn down a structure that kept him from himself. The suffering opened up space for what had been hidden beneath years of complacency. I didn't lose everything. I only lost what was preventing me from starting over. That's the hidden power of setbacks. They don't destroy, they reveal. Discipline, when born after chaos, is different. It ceases to be a to-do list and becomes a form of spiritual survival. It's the thread that pulls us back when the world collapses. But for this to happen, it's necessary to understand a simple principle. Action heals. Fear grows in the emptiness of inaction. The more you think about acting, the stronger the fear becomes. The more you act, the more it dissolves. Hesitation is the ground where fear takes root. That's why the first step has so much power. It breaks the spell of paralysis. Yet, it's a step almost no one takes. Because acting is challenging the part of the mind that wants to maintain control. The mind fears the unknown and tries to protect it with 1,000 says, it's not the right time. I lack preparation. You might fail. But what it doesn't understand is that the unknown is the only place where growth happens. Control is an illusion that imprisons us. It's fear disguised as rational. An experiment conducted in 1979 by psychologist Robert Rosenthal demonstrated something fascinating about the power of action. He separated two groups of students and told them that the rats in one group were genetically more intelligent than those in the other. It was a lie. The rats were identical. Even so, the students who believed they were working with intelligent rats gained much better results. The explanation was simple. Belief shaped action. Action shaped the result. This same principle applies to us. When we act believing that something is possible, we create the conditions for it. But what if the fear persists, even after taking action? That's because it doesn't disappear all at once. It recedes, serves, tries to return. It must be confronted repeatedly until it surrenders. Each disciplined act is a message sent to the unconscious. I am in command now. And over time, this message transforms into conviction. What was once struggle becomes instinct. What once required strength begins to flow naturally. Mind, once the enemy, becomes ally. There is a turning point in every journey of self-mastery. In the beginning, effort is against the world. Then, it is against oneself. In the end, it is with the world. It is the moment when effort and purpose merge. When this happens, work ceases to be an obligation and becomes an expression. Discipline transforms into pleasure because doing begins to like being. It is the instant when waking up early, keeping promises, staying firm are no longer sacrifices. They are the natural language of someone who has found direction. But before that point, the path is arduous. Your mind will test your patience. People will doubt you. There will be days when nothing seems to make sense. That's when many give up an instant before the turning point. The unconscious acts silently, reorganizing forces you don't see. Persistence is the ritual that sustains this invisible process. Even when there is no apparent result, their subterranean transformation happens. It's like the moment before dawn. It seems like darkness, but it's only the prelude to light. Jung said that the unconscious is like an underground river. When we flow with it, we feel lightness. When we resist, it drags us down. Discipline is the way to direct this river, not to contain it, but to give it form. Without direction, energy becomes destructive. Desire without purpose becomes compulsion. Will without focus becomes anxiety. Impulse without awareness becomes chaos. Discipline transforms impulse into creation. There's also something few. Discipline doesn't eliminate fear, but redefines its function. Fear ceases to be a barrier and becomes a compass. It points to the exact place we need to go. What scares us most is usually what can set us free the most. That's why the greatest transformations happen right after the biggest internal confrontation. The moment when pain turns into energy and suffering into clarity. And when that clarity arrives, everything changes. The external world seems the same, but the perspective is different. What was once an obstacle becomes practice. What was once failure becomes learning. What was once fear becomes strength. It's as if life rewards silent effort with a new lens. You begin to see opportunities where you previously saw problems, and doors open where there were once walls. But there's a catch. Mind will try to sabotage progress. It will tell you that you've done enough, that you deserve a long break. You can relax now. That's when the cycle of self-sabotage begins. The ego can't stand losing control and will always try to claim credit for the achievement. True discipline begins when you no longer need to be observed, praised, or reminded. When what you do doesn't depend on approval, but on purpose. And then comes the final turning point. Discipline ceases to be an applied force and becomes a natural state. You act because that's who you are. Effort dissolves into flow. Fear no longer dictates the pace. The mind, once a battlefield, becomes a place of peace. Life doesn't lose its challenges. The way you face them changes completely. It is at this point that the journey touches on what is deepest in Jung, the recognition that discipline, in the end, is a form of love. A love that seeks no reward, only expression. It is love for one's own existence, translated into action. As to act, even when it is difficult, is to say to the universe, I choose to continue. And perhaps that's the secret everyone seeks without realizing. Discovery that freedom we so desire has never been outside, but with you even when one is watching. Because destiny doesn't reveal itself to those who wait, it reveals itself to those who persevere. There's a moment in life when everything finally seems to make sense. Not because circumstances have changed, but because your perspective has. Discipline, once seemed like an external force, reveals itself as a return to the center, a reunion with your own essence. After so many falls, attempts, and silences, you began to realize nothing was in. Each mistake, each detour, each night of doubt was a way for life to teach patience and depth. Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming whole, doesn't happen all at once, but in fragments of consciousness. And that's exactly what discipline does. It stitches you back together, piece by piece, until one day you recognize yourself as whole again. It all begins when you decide to stop negotiating with your excuses. The brain will always seek comfort, always create logical arguments to postpone what is important. It is an excellent advocate for stagnation, but there is a force that transcends it. The conscious decision. The moment you say now, something changes direction within. It's as if a dormant part awakens and takes control. The body still feels fear, but the heart moves forward. And it is at that instant that the transformation begins. Not when you achieve something, but when you choose not to run away anymore. Discipline isn't about rigidity, it's about clarity. About waking up and knowing what needs to be done, even if you don't feel like it. It's about respecting your own commitments, as if you were keeping a sacred promise. And interestingly, the more you practice, the simpler it becomes. The effort diminishes because the habit begins to work in you. The mind understands the pattern, the body responds, the subconscious aligns. What once seemed like a daily struggle becomes a natural flow. It's the point where you realize you're not forcing anything, you're simply being who you're meant to be. But the world will test this new version. There are always distractions trying to pull you off, comparison with others, rush for results, fear of not being enough. When that happens, remember, discipline is silent movement. It doesn't need to prove anything, anyone. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to show off. You don't need to rush. Consistency speaks for itself. Time is the ally of those who persevere. Nothing remains impossible for those who stay true to their purpose. And if there's a secret to staying strong, it's this. Find your why. The how, nor the how much, the why. Why do you want to change? Is this dream important? When the answer is true, it sustains everything. Purpose gives strength to the body when mood fails. It's the invisible fuel that transforms "I need to do this" into "I want to continue." That's why the most disciplined people aren't the strongest, but the most conscious. They know that today's effort is the bridge to tomorrow's freedom. And perhaps freedom is the most misunderstood word of our. Many people believe that being free means doing whatever you want. But true freedom is being able to choose what is right, even when it's not the easiest thing to do. It's being the master of your own time, your own focus, your own emotions. Discipline doesn't imprison you, it gives you back control. It's the path of the mind over chaos, of purpose over impulse, of awareness over fear. Science confirms what Jung and so many others have already intuited. When we create small rituals of consistency, the brain releases substances that reinforce feelings of security and well-being. Each small daily victory sends a clear message to the mind. I can trust myself. Confidence is the foundation of all transformation. You begin to walk differently, to speak differently, to attract people and opportunities that vibrate at the same frequency. Life begins to respond to the new energy you sustain. But make no mistake, there will be days when nothing makes sense. Days when your body is tired, your mind scattered, and your heart doubts. It is on these days that discipline reveals its true power. Continue anyway, because you're strong, but because you know that giving up would be more. Every step taken in the absence of motivation is worth 10, because it proves that you no longer depend on enthusiasm, vision. And that decision, when repeated, becomes destiny. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of discipline, what it builds within. In the beginning, you seek external results, better body, a stable job, a fulfilled dream. But over time, you realize that the greatest gain is invisible, serenity. It's the gaze that no longer needs to justify itself, the silence that no longer fears emptiness, the mind that no longer sabotages itself. Discipline is the ritual that transforms doing into being. You no longer act to become, you act because Jung said that the greatest miracle of humankind is managing to transform instinct into consciousness. Discipline is exactly that, the domestication of inner brute force, channeled towards creation. When you act with purpose, energy stops being lost in anxiety and begins to flow into accomplishment. It's as if life opens up space for your movement because it finally realizes that you are taking your own existence seriously. And here's the most important point of all. Discipline doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be genuine. You will fail, you will be late, you will lose focus sometimes, and that's okay. What matters is coming back. Each time you return, you reaffirm your commitment to your own growth. Failure isn't falling, it's giving up on getting. Consistency is born from this cycle, making mistakes, adjusting, continuing. That's how the subconscious learns to trust you and begins to collaborate, no longer resisting. In the end, you will understand that discipline is not a set of habits, a state of consciousness. It is the recognition that life happens in the now, and that each choice is a brick in the temple of your destiny. Don't wait for the perfect day. It won't come. Don't wait for fear to disappear. It only diminishes. Face it. Start today, even if it's small, even if no one sees, even if it seems significant. Because the small things done every day transform into something immense. If there's one thing you need to remember, it's this: action heals. Inertia makes you sick. Every step you take is an affirmation that you'll believe in yourself. The future is not a destination. A path built with conscious choices, and the most powerful of these, choice to keep going. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Imagine the version of yourself that has overcome its limitations, that has fulfilled its promises, that finally lives with purpose. That version already exists within you, waiting for your first move. Give it a chance. Do what needs to be done, even if you don't feel like it. Because in the end, discipline is the purest form of love, and act. If this message touched you deeply, leave a comment, even anonymously. Write down what you will start today, tomorrow. This creates a link between thought and action, transforming ideas into reality. Like this video so it reaches more people who also need to rediscover themselves, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me. With each new video, we will delve deeper into the mind, emotions, and invisible forces that shape human destiny. Because in the end, there is no such thing as chance. There is only the mind shaping destiny. Each act of discipline is a new line that you write with your own hands in the story of your life.